Tractate Bava Batra, page 155. We are 9 lines from the top of the page. A variety of subjects we're going to discuss today. First and foremost is continuation of the subject of the nivul hamet, which means the prohibition against any form of desecration of the body. In Judaism we believe the sacredness of the body, and therefore it's a sensitive subject, meaning any manner of tempting to open the grave, remove the body, transfer the body. It's a huge problem in Jewish faith. Rarely there are exceptions such as desecration of cemeteries and things like that, but in general we do not do that. We do not open the grave to check. But we discussed the previous daf a circumstance such as the question that presented to Rabbi Akiva in those years, here back with the Talmudic time. Rabbi Akiva was one of the luminary rabbis and the head of the rabbinic court in Bnei Brak. And it was a serious question about minor person that inherited a property, and unfortunately he passed away while he sold the property, and the family said that he has no right to sell it because he is a minor. And in order to examine in those days to see the age of a person, they asked Rabbi Akiva if it's okay to open the grave, and he opposed it first and foremost because it's a kind of for the purpose of monetary or real estate, you are not allowed, he said, to open a grave and check the body of a person. That's the general concept of nivul hamet. We believe that any delay causes sorrow, any form of opening grave, like the story we mentioned in the previous shiur with Shmuel Hanavi, with the prophet Samuel, when Saul called upon him, is a trepidation. It's called cherdat adin, and therefore you don't do that. So we're going to discuss this subject. We're also going to discuss the subject of saris, a person that somehow he is kind of limited with his capability of development of maturity. How you determine, especially in the cases like that. We're also going to learn in those days the big difference between Talmudic time and nowadays when it's come to average age. Those days was the age of 36, meaning average person was 72. Soon you see the sources for that. We're going to speak also about witnesses when it's come to a dut. How far you take witnesses when it's come to movable property versus witnesses when it's come to land, to estates. It's huge different. But the subject of katan, meaning a minor, which is the core subject, if a minor allowed to give a gift, and if yes, what's the minimum age for him to give a gift that we validate the gift, is the beginning of our discussion. So as we said, we are page 155, 9 lines from the top of the page. Itmar katan me'ematai mocher benichsei haviv. So obviously, biblically speaking, a minor can sell something when he reached the age of maturity. And in general, we know the bar mitzvah, which is the age of 13 for a boy or girl, 12 years of age. We understand that that's the age when they have public hair, so that's the time. The sages, however, hold that that's not sufficient, and we discussed yesterday in general the difference, but here we see the opinion. Rava Amar Rav Nachman ben 18 shana v'Rav Hunana bar Chinana Amar Rav Nachman ben 20 shana. So the first rule, the first opinion is 18 years, and the rabbis hold that Rashbam and others said that it is a completion of 18 years, not during the 18 years. And the other one is 20 years of age. So it's in parentheses, Mativ Rabbi Zera. So now we bring a challenge from what we studied yesterday, which is the subject of Bnei Brak. So let's just review for those new faces. Maaseh Bnei Brak, the city in Israel called Bnei Brak. Be'echad shemachar benichsei aviv, a fellow that inherited from his late father estate and he sold it. Umet, and unfortunately that young man passed away. Uba'u bnei mishpacha ve'ir'aru, so the family members came in and they challenged the right of that person as a minor to sell the estate. Lomar katan haya bish'at mita. So since he was a minor at the time of death, he is no right to sell, and therefore there is no validity to that sale. Uba'u v'shalut Rabbi Akiva, ma'u lebodko. So they come and ask a painful question, the great Rabbi Akiva, the head of rabbinic court in Neibrak. They said to him, do we allow to tempt with the grave, meaning to open the grave and check? By the way, practically speaking, I serve 21 years in this country, so as you know, it's a different state regulation. So when I was a rabbi in New Jersey, and then I was a rabbi in Maryland for 15 years, many times it was questions of coffin, or family members want before the burial to identify the deceased by opening the coffin. And in Israel, obviously, it's different. There is no coffin. You just wrap up the body after Chevra Kadisha does their job with shroud, and then you bury it as is. But here, basically, the idea is they want to check the level of maturity by knowing if you have hair. So Amar Lahem, Rabbi Akiva said, two very painful and serious reasons you can't do it. Number one, he says, first and foremost, I atem rasha'im lenavlo, and that's so important. He said to them, it is not permitted for you to disgrace him for the sake of monetary claim. What do you try to do? You try to gain money, or money resolution, or reconciliation between party over money, sell and buy, and that's sufficient for you to even think to open the grave and start tempting with the deceased. It's very wrong. And number two, ועוד סימנים עשויים להשתנות לאחר מתה. Another very logical reasoning, he says, unfortunately, because the body decay, sign that indicating puberty, which means changing with the facial expression, the body structure, etc., are likely to change after death, and therefore nothing can be proved by examining the body. So the reason for that is the family member thought that by ruling that way it will change the rule for their to be in their side. Tosfot said that that was basically the core subject of disputation. Gemarrah said, Bishlam aleman damar, this is good by the view of the one who said that ben 18 shana, that the child, the son, can sell the property once he reach the 18 years of age. So the truth is, before we continue, there is a response called Chavot Yair, is one of the most respected responses. So he brought from the great response of Avodat HaGershuni about two deceased that was buried, but each of them in those days was a great poverty and other reasons, so each of them is a missing part of the shroud. And the question is, one was 20 years old, one was a minor, so they ask if it's okay to open and wrap up the entire body with that shroud. And he rules the minor you can do it, but not the mature adult. Why? He called it Cherdat Emat Adin. As we explained earlier, the fear, the trepidation of the deceased, to, in a way, like the case is reopened when you pull out the body and rebury it. So he brought from the head rabbi of Nickelsburg, his name is Rabbi David Oppenheim, and he brought the Gemarrah that we discuss here, and he said that the Rabbi Akiva here took the whole subject of Nivul Hamet and doesn't speak about Cherdat Hamet. So in short, Rav Oppenheim said the concept of Cherdat Hamet, most of the rabbis agreed, and the only thing he said that apparently Nivul Kashe Me'atzar, which means in one hand there is a desecration or cause the disgrace of the body by opening it. Another phase of understanding is the sorrow that is caused the body, because it's like re-evaluation of the is like trialing the person, going back to the whole process of a heavenly tribunal. So that's the basic writing, but obviously there is I just want to give you a vignette of Knesset Yechezkel. Knesset Yechezkel Yoreh De'ah, in Siman Memdalet, he bring the Chacham Tzvi and he said, לעניות דעתי לא דע מכלל, you cannot compare the nivul to a tsar. מי מקדמית ביזיון החי בהיותו חי ומסווה הבושה על פניו, מה שיש כן ביזיון המת שעבר מת ואין לו יצר רע ואין לו בושת ואין יצרה שולט. He's no longer among the living, he doesn't have any evil inclination, the evil inclination cannot control him. וראה לעבר והיו שניהם מרובים ולא התבשש ולא היה יצרה שולט. So he basically said that he bring these sources that you cannot compare, but you're welcome to read more on this. My brother-in-law, David Avraham Mandelbaum, in his book Daf al Daf, expand on this subject a lot. Page 155b, Hainu de Ka'atu ve'amru lei. So that's the reason they came and said to Rabbi Akiva, Ma'u lebodko? What is the halacha that we need to check? I elai amart mi ben 20 ki badku lei mai havei. If you tell me that they can sell the property from the time that he's 20 years old, even if they examine him, what of it? V'atnan ben 20 shelo הביא שתי שערות. We learn if someone is the age of 20 that is not reached the public hair, that's Gemarrah in Nida 47b. יביאו ראיה שהוא בן 20. They should bring a proof that he's 20 years of age. והוא הסריס לא חולץ ולא מיימם. Here we enter to another important a discussion, which is the law of chalitza, the releasing of a sister-in-law that have no children. So they said that he doesn't enter neither chalitza nor levirate marriage with their widow. So 20 years old is considered an adult. In that sense, even if he has not developed a sign of maturity, so there's no reason to examine the body. And as you see, the whole notion of the rabbis, you derive from that another important conclusion, that we are very hold not only the sanctity of life, but also the sanctity of afterlife, and therefore the moment it's buried, it's buried. Lavit marala אמר רבי שמואל בר רבי יצחק אמר רב, והוא שנולדו בו סימני סריס. Here you talk about case that all that happened to a person, he was sexually undeveloped person, which means that the one in Bnei Brak doesn't have those signs. So therefore the cell is invalid. So אמר רבא, די קנה בדקתנה והוא עשרית שמע מינה. So the Gemara limited that and it said that the way that we conclude from the Mishnah, that the Mishnah is speaking of one who developed the sign of a sexually undeveloped man. So if he wasn't born with the sign of maturity, when it's considered a minor, or how exactly you so they said, Tana Rab Chia ad rov shnotav. Rab Chia said most of his years. So what is most of his years? So the Meforshim tells us that 36 is the middle of life. They derive it from the book of Tehillim, chapter 90. They said, Yemei shnotenu, HaMelech David said, our life is what? 70 shana. So if you go by half, it's a 36. So the idea is, the Rashbam explained, the moment the person reaches that age and don't develop a maturity, so we're not concerned in the sense that he is a minor, and we assume that he is basically saris, he's a person who was undeveloped. So basically when they come before Rabbi Chia, he used to examine. So ikachish, if it was too skinny, amarlu libri. So he asked to feed him a lot until he gets more weight. Ve'i ibri, if he was overweight, amarlu likhush. He asked him to reduce his food until he reduce his weight. Dehani simanei zimnin da'at u'nechamat chishota nisimim da'at u'nechamat biriuta. Again, remember in Talmudic time, etc. But they said that those signs can be an act of a person too skinny or too fat. So that's the story. בא אלו תוך זמן כלפני או כלאחר זמן. So the idea is תוך זמן. So during the year that he have an access to a state of his father, which is, according to Rava, is doing the 18 years of life. According to the Rav Huna Bar Chinna is doing the 20 years of life. So is that klapei zman or kileachar zman? So how you treated it? It's like the year when a minor comes to an age with regard to selling his deceased father property. So during the 18 or 20 years or after the time. אמר רבא אמר רב נחמן בתוך זמן כלפני זמן. So it means he cannot sell before the completion of the year. רבא בר שילה אמר רב נחמן בתוך זמן לאחר זמן. So it means he can sell from the beginning of the year. ועד רבא, and this שיטה, this rule of רבא, לאו בפירוש יתמר, אלא מכללה יתמר. דהוא תוך זמן אזיל זבי נכסי ועתה לקמי דרבא. אמר לו לא עשה ולא כלום. During the time, so Rava said it's nothing. מה דחזה סבר משום דתוך זמן כלפני זמן. So that's the reason he said it. ולא הקיעת השטותא יתרת החזה בה. So Rava saw that he is very fool the way he said. דהבה כמשחרר להו להבדי. He just let his slave free. So since Rava saw that he was mentally incompetent, so he basically invalidated the whole sale. And that's the way the מפרשים explains. Anyway, שלח לה גידל בר מנשה לרבא. That's the question. למדנו רבנו תינוקת בת 14 שנה ויום אחד יודעת בטיב משא ומתן מהו. So if you have a girl that she reached the age of 14 years and 1 day, and she understands the manner of nature of businesses, so can she have the right to sell the estate of the father? שלח לי, אם יודעת בטיב משא ומתן, מככה ממכר. If she is familiar with business negotiations, so her purchase is valid and the purchase of sale is valid. So they said, וישלח לה תינוק. So there's a male baby. So למעשה שהיה כך היה. So that's basically the story that happened. ולשלח לה תינוקת בת 12 שנה ויום אחד, that is also passed, she is also passed בת מצווה, 12 years and 1 day. So why particularly 14? מעשה שהיה כך היה, that was exactly story that happened. ועד הרב לפירוש יתמר למכלל היתמר. דהוא פחות בן 20 דאז לזביל נכסי, עתה לקמי דרבא, אמר לקרובי, זי לכל תמרי ושדי בקשייתא ברבא. So which means eat the date and throw the seeds in front of Rabba's house. So Rabba will see you and he think that you are a total fool, and he must probably conclude that you don't know anything about business negotiation, and therefore he will abrogate the sale. Avad Achi, he did it. Amar lehu zvina lo zvinei. The sale is not valid. Ki ka katvu l'shtara, when the scribe in the rabbinic court wrote the deed for the orphan, Amar lo lekochot, he said to them in a way like almost deceiving them. We have an idea how you can save expenses. Zil eima le Rabba, you should go and say to Rabba, Megillat Esther bezuza, shtara demar bezuza. If you talk about Esther's scroll, that is a large one, so the scribe take 1 dinar for his labor, how you tell me that even for the deed of a minor, you ask me to to pay the same? It should be much less. So it means that they hope that Rabba will understand that he is smart, and because he's smart in the way he asks, he's wise enough, shrewd enough, that familiar with the business negotiation, and therefore the Rabba will back out and allow him to have this business, this deal. Azal Amar Lei. So Rabba really retrieved what he said. Amar Lei zbini zivnei, אמרו לקרובי לקוחות הגמרו, אמר לו מסברי לסבר. When they explain to him something with wisdom, he understand. כיוון נמסר לו וסבר מדעדה, ועדה אחרי חוץ את פטרה ועד בי. So okay, so he was rude and wasn't proper, right? But as far as the understanding, he basically chutzpah is rude, is obnoxious, but he's not mentally incompetent. So Amar Ravuna B'Reder Yeshua le'edut eduto edut. So when it's come to testimony, of one who is not old enough to sell property that he inherits from his father, his testimony is a valid testimony. אמר מזוטרא לא אמרן אלא במיטלטלי, אבל במקרקעין לא. All of that applies to only movable property, but not a permanent property. So permanent land, his witnesses, his testimony is not valid. אמר לרב אשי למר זוטרא, מה ישנם מיטלטלי דזבינה זבינה? What's the difference between movable property to land? אלא מעתה הדתנן. This is something we learn in Tractate Gittin, page 59. הפעוטות מכחן ממכח וממכרן ממכרן ממטלטלים הכנה מדי עדותן. Here we talk about very young children. So he said, a purchase made by young children is valid purchase, and the sale made by them is valid sale. So this halachot applies to transactions involving movable property. So he said, so here too you hold the same thing. So Amar lei hatam be'ina v'amdu shnei anashim v'leika. We said that part of the Torah requirement in the book of Dvarim, chapter 19, is to have two witnesses stand before the Kohanim, before the judges, and here, in this case, you do not have it. Because minor is not considering quote-unquote anashim, and therefore you don't have the requirement, versus a boy that reached the age of 13 years, and he have a two public hair, is basically considering an ish, a mature adult, and if you come and give a testimony in regards to a movable property, we take his testimony and we basically apply it as a regular testimony, because when it's come to movable property, as we said, mimkaru kayam itself is a valid. Now we talk about another phase, which is giving a gift. The question is if a minor can give a gift and if it's valid. So he hold yes. Because he doesn't have the sophistication. How much so when it's come to the gift, that is not reduce the price and not that is not authorized to give a gift, and nothing at all come into his possession in exchange. So Amar Lei, so Amemar rejected this, and he said to Rav Ashi, page 156, top of the page, ולטעמך זבין שווה חמשה בשיטה הכנמי דזבנינן זביני. According to your view that the sages abrogated the sale because they're concerned that the orphan will lose out of that sale, you mean to say that the orphan sold his estate that worth 5 dinar for a 6, and obviously he made money out of that. So here, for sure, it's a valid sale. So it means that very clear here you see that the sages did not separate it, not differentiated between selling estate by such a young man, young boy, and they said regardless that sale is abrogated, is not, it's annulled, it's not valid. So it means that what you hold is incorrect. Ela, you have to say that the reason the sages abrogated this sale for that young man from his father's estate, it's because Kim lehu lerabanan, the sages know the nuka mekarvat da'atei gabei zuzei, which is young man, the money is kind of very attracted to him, meaning that's the young people, and that makes a difference. Ve'i amar zvinei zvinei, if you tell me that that sale is valid, zimnin demekar keshei leizuzei, sometimes a buyer just show him the money, azil mezaben lechulu nichsei de'avura. So he go and he sell all his father's estate for small money. But if something will give a gift, the orphan doesn't have a big I just want to comment on that, that's one of the strong prohibition against taking advantage of orphan. Sometimes people feel because he's a young man